Great stories there of innovation and resilience from people who've poured their lives into creating these businesses. Our next discussion also focuses on resilience and innovation by private companies, both large and small. Our guests are Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation, Shola David Bora, Chief Executive Officer, Africa Regions, Standard Bank Group, and Ajayta Shah, founder and CEO of Frontier Markets in India. Dr. Al-Mashat, let me start with you. This question was posted on our website. How should health and economic systems change to adapt to future crises? And what has the current COVID-19 pandemic taught us?
Thank you very much. Of course, the pandemic has taught us a great deal. It has taught us that for inclusion, social inclusion, health and education come as priorities. So it's a re-emphasis of maybe what all policymakers and citizens wanted to see happen, but it actually put it in the forefront. I believe that with what happened in terms of prioritization of health, there is a focus with respect to regulatory frameworks that governments have. There's also more invitation for private-public partnerships, which is extremely important because this pandemic has also taught us that no one can do it on their own. All stakeholders have to be involved, be them policymakers, governments, or private sector, civil society. And that was the only way to push forward. And if we're going to use the terminology, leave no one behind, the only leave no one behind is actually if all of us collaborate collectively within countries and collectively on the multilateral stage as well.
All right. Ms. David Bora, the disruption of global trade and its effects on commodity prices and exports has hit the African continent particularly hard. How can financial institutions facilitate investment and trade flows between African countries to build resilience and increase regional integration?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, the pandemic disrupted supply chains severely, and this impacted trade and investment. At Standard Bank, what we have done is to provide innovative financing solutions that would impact the value chains of key sectors. So, for example, in the agricultural sector, we partnered with a fintech in Uganda to come up with a B2B tech platform called One Farm. And what One Farm does is to provide a whole series of services to the Ugandan farmer. They can access financing, they can access crop insurance, agronomy services, and training. And this has resulted in yields going up by up to 38%. It's enabled the farmers to trade more efficiently across their region. And this is particularly important because, as we know, the AFCFTA started this year, and I believe that agriculture is going to be a key driver of intra-Africa trade. Therefore, the ability of ourselves and other financial services organizations to provide financing for agri and other sectors is very important. And this will also help to stimulate value-added investments in these sectors. Thank you.
And the AFCTA that you mentioned is the African Continental Free Trade Area. So let's move to Ms. Shah. Your business, Frontier Markets, had to pivot when the pandemic hit, from delivering solar power solutions to groceries and other consumer goods. How are you able to shift that quickly?
Thank you. Over the last 5 years, we've worked very closely with the IFC Lighting Asia initiative to work on a model which focused on investing first and foremost in rural women entrepreneurs who were critical in helping us get access to insights from the villages that they live in. These women in the last 2 years have now been on a digital platform that we created called the Meri Saheli app, which essentially allows them to collect data and communicate with us through a digital means. When the pandemic hit, it became quite easy to leverage that platform and collect insights around the challenges that the pandemic created, which, as we've just discussed, was supply chain driven, and it was about essential services and goods. Leveraging the data, we were able to then partner with suppliers quite quickly to tell them that there's an opportunity to bring 450,000 rural customers access to goods that they otherwise would not be able to reach. So we were able to pivot quite quickly because we had data that backed up the need. We had a network of women entrepreneurs that were able to then deliver that effectively. And we had technology that allowed us to track the efficiencies to create a win-win for everybody. Suppliers got access to new markets. Sahelis, these women entrepreneurs, earned real income. Customers got access to essential services, and Frontier Markets actually doubled in its revenue and its growth because of it.
Brilliant. Dr. Al-Mashat, one question being asked by our audience is, can government promote local enterprise and self-employment, especially for women and other groups outside the formal sector? Can we support infrastructure and social services development?
There's no other way to move forward. The pandemic has actually allowed the acceptance of different modes of work. So today, remote work is no longer tabooed. It's actually something that is encouraged. And therefore, on a government level, there have been several decrees passed at the beginning of the pandemic, which allowed women in, for example, the government to be able to work from home if their children are less than 12 years old, or if they're pregnant, etc. On the other hand, the women issues related to the non-paid care, etc., have also become more tangible. People are seeing it, given the brunt that has fell on women. And then when you mention innovation, when you mention small and medium enterprises, these have also proved to be more resilient when it comes to the crisis. And therefore, encourage more, whether it is through financing, whether it is through more technical skills provided to women. In the case of Egypt, we were one of the first countries to have COVID-related policies. And we were singled out as the only country in Africa and West Asia to come up with a policy tracker and 21 policies related to women during COVID, and comes on the top of that providing technical skills, digital skills, because as we used to just talk about inequality when it comes to the income divide, but today the digital divide is something else which is extremely prominent. And therefore, in any policy discussion that a government has with its development partners, that it has with civil society, that it has with the private sector, this particular element comes in very forcefully. And if I just can conclude, all of us before COVID were either engaged in discussions whether or not technology is going to crowd out jobs. I think that COVID now shows that technology can be a catalyst, can be a driver towards more growth and being able to leap beyond the contraction that happened in the economy. And therefore, encouraging entrepreneurship, encouraging innovation, making sure that the startup ecosystem and landscape is also encouraged, because that is what will add more resilience to the economies in the face of any shock that can come forward.
Right. Ms. David Bora, another question that was shared on our website was, how can greater financial inclusion help boost the recovery in emerging and developing economies?
Over 80% of businesses in sub-Saharan Africa are SMEs. Many are run by women, and most of them are in the informal sector. So we believe at Standard Bank that supporting and enabling this segment is a critical part of driving Africa's growth. We have provided an electronic mobile wallet in several countries, Nigeria, Namibia, Malawi, Botswana, Eswatini. And this mobile wallet is very easily accessible, by small businesses. There are three key channels by which they can access this mobile wallet. The first is a USSD short code. And if they do have a smartphone, it can also be accessed via an app. And we also have a widespread agent network where they can simply walk to an agent and get cash or lodge in cash. They can obtain financing from the mobile wallet. They can trade, they can transfer value, they can store value. And we have found that this has created a multiplier effect in the ecosystems of these businesses, because they are suppliers to corporates. They employ people, whether it's 3, 4, 5. This helps to create jobs. This increases income levels and ultimately assists in recovery and accelerating growth in Africa. Thank you.
All right, and finally, Ms. Shah, your company has scaled up its digital platform in response to the pandemic. How can digital solutions help businesses crisis-proof themselves for the future?
I think there's 3 critical elements when thinking about your digital platform solution. One is it co-created with the communities that you're looking to serve that are at mass scale? Second is it rural friendly and intuitive so that you're actually being able to think about the millions of people that today, as it just discussed, are not digitally savvy? So can it be voice enabled? Can it be vernacular? Can it be simple enough where the most remote rural woman is able to use it? In India, that's how we created our app. We thought about the 165 million women today that ultimately could be using this app and actually build an assisted commerce business in their village on their own, because there were AI bots and voice-enabled systems that allowed them to do that. The third element is also thinking about the power of data. Ultimately, technology is a tool that finally bridges the knowledge gap in a really interesting way, right? Rural customers are able to access information to make better choices, but also suppliers and ecosystem enablers will get access to trends and patterns that will allow them to give better insights, to be either better prepared for crisis or have an opportunity to respond and co-create or innovate in the form of crisis, leveraging that data that can come into millions. So I think businesses today will be able to look at the matrices of access to efficiencies with technology, access to opportunity at scale with technology, but most importantly, also access to data and insights to be better prepared or respond faster.
Excellent. That is a good place to leave it, Ms. Shah, Ms. David Bora, and Dr. Mashat. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you've just joined us, welcome. I'm Laro Midowo, and we're discussing just what it will take to build a green, resilient, and inclusive economic recovery. We've got some great conversations ahead, but if you're interested in learning even more, we've pulled together some interesting stories and blogs. Just scroll down to the resources section of the World Bank Live page, and while you're there, please cast your vote in our poll. A reminder, this is what we're asking you. What should be the priority to ensure an inclusive economic recovery? Is it A, policy advice, or B, financial assistance? Vote C for protecting the poor and vulnerable, and your last option is D, helping countries purchase vaccines. Now, the economic impact of this pandemic has been particularly keenly felt by families. We asked people to tell us how their families were coping and what their hopes are for the future.